headlines across the world tell the story of thousands of children from the mass migration of refugees flooding European countries and entering the U.S. are missing, as in we don't know where they are, or into whose hands they've fallen, or what they've been left vulnerable to. So let's get into this right now with Joy Pullmann. She's the managing editor of The Federalist, and she recently wrote a piece about this titled, U.S. Welcomes Migrant Children to Sex Slavery. Joy joins me from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Hello there.
Bring us up to date. What's going on with these missing migrant children and who's responsible?
Well, recent Associated Press and Senate investigations have found that the wave of young children, mostly from Central America, that the Obama administration started letting into the country in 2012. There's approximately 90,000 of them that are all across the United States now. And the investigations have found that thousands of these children, perhaps tens of thousands, the Department of Health and Human Services cannot find them. They don't know how to locate them or the people who are supposed to be caring for them. And those investigations have also revealed that a number of these children have been sold into or trafficked into slavery, including sex slavery.
So what is sex slavery exactly? And can you give us an exact anecdote or case that you're referring to?
Sure. So the Associated Press report they give a number of instances, and one of these was of a 14-year-old girl who was forced to work in a bar where prostitution was occurring. The report didn't say that the young lady herself was pushed into sex slavery, but it did say that in their interviews with social workers, with psychologists, and other folks who are closely attuned to this problem, they have reported that children like this young lady have indeed been forced to have sex with people for money. That's pretty much the definition of sex trafficking.
Okay, Joe, the reason why I'm asking is because the title of your piece, that the U.S. welcomes migrant children into sex slavery, is pretty inflammatory. That's a large accusation. So I kind of went over myself with the AP investigation, and I didn't actually find a single case of sex slavery particularly. So I'm wondering, what is the thesis statement of your piece, and why use a title like that when the majority of cases seem to be about forced labor, which is of course absolutely an issue.
Mere slavery instead of sex slavery?
No, just forced labor.
Well, I'm sure that neither you
difference.
nor I. Right. Well, no, I mean, nobody thinks that these children should be forced into slavery of any kind, whether it involves sex or not. I know that you agree with that. But I'll refer you, if you go back to that AP article that I linked to in mine, I want to say about a third of the way down, there's a paragraph there where the AP says that in what I practically just quoted here, it has had conversations with folks who are working with these children who have confirmed reports of children actually been sexually trafficked.
And so what do you think the solution to this is? I mean, is this a case of just gross misconduct? Well, that's kind of like asking me what's the solution
to the problem of evil. But I mean, so I think if we look at this in a broader picture, let's look at the United States and talk about the issue of child trafficking, problems with our social welfare system in general. So the Obama administration, wanted to extend a hand to young children, who are obviously in need. But you can't forget that there's a context that these young children are being placed into, by people who should be a little more sober and wise. So, for example, look at the United States foster care system. There are now approximately 400,000 American children that are in the foster care system, and a number of and the social welfare agencies, including in Indiana where I live, are reporting that they have a very difficult time handling the existing American citizens who are in our social services, our welfare, and our foster systems. So in that kind of context, it's not really surprising that, if you add another near 90,000 children when we cannot handle the 400,000 that we already have inside the system, then it's not surprising that the Department of Health and Human Services, as the representatives told Congress recently in a hearing, that they started lowering their standards. They were placing children with people that they did not have a policy against placing children with people who had been convicted of sexual crimes, which, our existing foster care system refuses to place children with those sorts of adults for good reason. And as the Associated Press also reported,
hold on, let me just,
they're lowering their standards, and these children are not being cared for properly.
Joy, I totally agree with you, but let's just stop and talk about that point for a moment. So this wasn't always the case, that these regulations and restrictions were ignored. So what happened to cause these restrictions to be pulled away and for children to be allowed to go into environments where sponsors were not fingerprinted and so forth? What were the circumstances?
Well, it's very clear from both of those reports, from the Senate investigation and from the Associated Press's investigation, that really I think what you're looking for here is kind of the trigger, you know, what prompted this lowering of standards. And what the folks that were interviewed from Health and Human Services said is that the number of children that were thrust into their care was so numerous that they literally could not find people to care for them. So this is really a problem of not being able to handle so many children at one time. We don't have the infrastructure for it.
So again, it goes back to, you know, what is the solution? And I don't think saying what's the solution to evil is really the answer. We can't just throw up our hands. We have kids, and as we both agree, we don't want children to be entering into an environment of sex slavery or sex trafficking, or as the AP article indicates, mostly forced labor. So what can we do to be in better service to these children?
Okay. Well, I mean, of course, I agree with you that you're never going to eradicate every single instance of anything bad happening, right? So, let's agree there. And so then what you have to focus on is how can we make sure that the programs we have in place, while they're not going to be perfect, they are, in good working order, right? They are generally helpful to the people that they're designed and aimed at helping. So given that, I mean, I think again, it would have been wise. So we have a Congress, for example. We have representatives because their job is to represent the American people's needs, right? And so the Obama administration decided not to go through that kind of sifting body, that check on its power and its authority, and just to pull in, 90,000 children from other countries.
Joy, let's just stop on that one point, because I want to ask you about it, and I won't be able to remember if you hit 20 different points at once. So when you say the Obama administration failed to, are we talking about the Congress that failed to adequately provide funding so that there were enough beds, that they did not have to lower these restrictions and send these children out into sponsors' homes without the regulations that were previously required?
It sounds to me like you're saying that Congress should be required to provide funding for whatever the president himself decides should happen, which is what happened with this immigration program. I mean, Congress did not authorize accepting 90,000 children into America. That was an executive action that the president just decided to do himself.
Right. So if, let's say you have 90,000 children in front of you that need help, are you going to deny them help? I mean, I don't see, you're placing the blame solely on...
We have 400,000 children that are in the foster care system that need and deserve our help because they are American citizens, and we should focus on them first. And once their needs are cared for, then we can be thinking about other children in other countries.
Well, I think that's a very interesting take. Joy, thanks for your time today on this. And for more on Joy's writing, including the commentary we've been talking about, please check out her work on thefederalist.com.